Now it's time for a look through the day's papers, and Ursula von der Leyen's trip to Lampedusa to address the migration crisis is making headlines here in France, other European papers as well, and Erin is here to tell us more about it. Erin.
That's right. Well, the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen traveled to the southern Italian island alongside Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni for French paper La Croix, which I have up here. The crisis is a, quote, European emergency. The piece says that von der Leyen's visit is an acknowledgement that the massive arrival of migrants to Lampedusa in recent weeks has a devastating effect on public opinion. Now, the French paper Le Figaro kind of focuses on the European Union, Europe powerless, faced with the mass arrival of migrants. The paper says, the right-wing paper says that Europe is at risk of imploding because of immigration. Now, it uses Russia's invasion of Ukraine as a point of comparison, saying that for decades, EU nations were in denial about the threat that Russia posed, that the migration crisis is the same. The paper I quote says EU countries refuse to see political, economic, and cultural disturbances brought on by massive and uncontrolled immigration. And then finally, the Italian paper Corriere della Sera also kind of echoes concerns about the EU's response without taking the more kind of ideological opposition to immigration that you often see in the French paper Le Figaro. It actually blames EU deadlock on migration on deep divisions between states, but more importantly, it says on the kind of outdated, obsolete institutional architecture of the European Union. The piece says that new legal mechanisms are needed to address the issue, including perhaps modifying and updating its basic treaties. Stuart.
Well, meanwhile, papers in the UK are focusing on serious allegations against a British comedian, Erin.
That's right, Stuart. Just to give you an idea of the scale of the issue, these are 9 different papers that had front pages on the accusations against comedian Russell Brand. He has been accused of rape, sexual assault, and even emotionally abusing several different women at the height of his fame. Now, for the British media outlet iNews, this kind of puts British broadcasters in the spotlight. It could cause problems for 2 of them in particular. That's the BBC and Channel 4, which are under pressure to reveal just how much they knew about the allegations, given their historic ties to Brand. Now, both have since launched investigations into the matter, and high-level bosses there could also be summoned to testify before members of Parliament.
And it's also brought attention to different societal issues linked to allegations of sexual abuse too.
Yes, in an opinion piece also on iNews, an editorialist argues that the crisis highlights the importance of diligent journalism. He says, of course, it would be better if these cases didn't have to be kind of thrust into the public by reporters, but he argues that institutional deficiencies make trial by media the only kind of efficient way to make sure that these cases are handled properly. He also assails the role of societal toxic masculinity and the way that social media kind of elevates people who embody that. Now, on that same theme, The Guardian also took a look at how people like Elon Musk and misogynist Andrew Tate took up conspiracy theories about why these claims against Russell Brand were published. These kinds of personalities claim that Brand, like themselves, is somehow the victim of a coordinated attack by mainstream media outlets. But The Guardian, of course, reminds readers that these people kind of built their fame on propagating falsehoods.
Let's change gears now. Erin has found us a couple of pieces on concerns about Joe Biden, this is.
That is right, Stuart. The New York Times published a piece on its front page, at least online, this morning about how party leaders have rallied behind his re-election bid. And this, despite a growing number of polls suggesting that voters do not want Joe Biden to run for president again. A CNN poll, for example, quoted in the piece, says as many as 67% of Democrats say that Joe Biden should not run. And this is mostly because of his age. He would be 82 on Inauguration Day if he were to win, meaning if he were then to finish his term, he would be closer to 90 years old than 80 years old by the end of those 4 years. Now, the Financial Times explains in a kind of more in a bigger piece expanding on the topic that the U.S. is kind of becoming a gerontocracy, and that's a danger to its democracy. It says that the U.S. is actually an outlier in this, even in a world where already the majority of the world's lawmakers are significantly older than the broader population. In the United States, the piece says 1 in 5 congresspeople is over the age of 70. It says that this concern is twofold. On the one hand, you're wondering whether or not these elected officials are physically or mentally fit to continue to do the job. And the other problem is that severe underrepresentation of young people means that their interests are not being taken into account, and that contributes to political apathy amongst the youth.
Erin's going to finish with a missing object. It's not just any old object, though, is it, Erin?
That's right, Stuart. Let's just say you definitely can't bring it to the lost and found if you find it. That's because, as the British paper The Guardian tells us, it's actually a fighter jet, and an F-35 fighter jet to be exact. The seemingly all-powerful American military is having trouble finding it. Now, basically, as the piece tells us, the plane went missing after a pilot ejected from it for an unknown reason over the state of South Carolina, an incident that the military simply described rather laconically as a mishap. Now, as you can imagine, Stuart, social media is having a ball with this one, especially because the military says, they need the public to locate this flight that was involved in a mishap. If you have any information that may help people find it, call this number. At least one person tweeting, how is there not a tracking device on this major military plane? And what are you asking the public to do? Just find a jet and turn it in, as you can imagine. That's definitely not going to be easy for the person to find.
It's not a pigeon, is it? It's a fighter jet.
Exactly.
You would have thought it was spottable, but there you go. Perhaps Erin will track it down in time for tomorrow's paper review. Who knows?
Never know.